The summer of 1973 in the Rocky Mountains brought more than just heat. It brought a storm like no one had seen in years. Near Devil's Ridge, the sky darkened early, rolling clouds thick and heavy, promising a night of relentless thunder and rain. 3 hikers, exhausted and caught off guard, stumbled upon an old ranger cabin just as the first bolt split the sky. The wind howled through the trees, shaking loose branches and sending rain hammering against the roof. The cabin, abandoned and creaking, seemed like the only safe haven in the wilderness. Thunder shook the ground beneath their feet, each crack vibrating through the cabin walls as if the mountains themselves were roaring. The hikers exchanged uneasy glances, knowing they were miles from help and that the storm would not let them rest easy. Every flash of lightning illuminated the cabin's worn wood, casting shadows that danced like restless spirits. They huddled together, waiting out the storm, unaware that the night would bring more than just rain and thunder. Something from the past was about to make its presence known. Around midnight, as the storm raged outside, Elliot's eyes caught something strange through the rain-streaked window. A faint flicker of light danced among the trees, moving slowly, almost deliberately. At first, he thought it might be a lantern carried by a late-night park ranger, or perhaps a reflection from a distant cabin. The light swayed, weaving between the trunks, inching closer to the cabin. Heart racing, Elliot nudged the others, insisting they take a look. Curiosity mixed with fear pushed him forward, and he opened the door, expecting to see anyone out there. But the forest was empty. Only the relentless storm met his gaze, lightning illuminating the wet ground in brief, stark flashes. And yet, the footprints told a different story. Bare and fresh, they led from the doorway into the dark forest. As if someone or something had just vanished into the night, a shiver ran through the group. The flicker of light had vanished as mysteriously as it appeared, leaving behind a silence even the storm couldn't break. For the hikers, it was clear. This night would be far stranger than they had ever imagined. The hikers froze, staring at the ground outside the cabin. Bare footprints pressed into the mud, leading straight from the doorway and vanishing into the dense forest. No one had come in, no one had been there. And yet the marks were undeniable, fresh and impossibly human. Panic began to creep in. Every rustle of leaves, every crack of thunder made their hearts race faster. Who or what could have left them? Questions tumbled through their minds, each more unsettling than the last. The forest seemed to watch them, shadows stretching and twisting in the lightning's flash. With a sense of urgency, they barricaded the cabin door, piling old furniture and logs against it. Every creak of the wood felt like it might give way to an unseen presence outside. The storm continued its relentless assault, rain hammering the roof, wind rattling the walls, and still the footprints lingered in their minds, haunting every glance out the window. They huddled together, knowing the night would be long, and that by morning, the forest might reveal its secrets or leave them with mysteries that would never be explained. When morning finally broke and the storm retreated, the hikers cautiously stepped outside, following the trail of bare footprints into the damp forest. The ground glistened with rain, the air still heavy and electric from the night storm. Every step felt surreal, like walking through a memory someone else had left behind. The trail led them to a tangle of trees where something unexpected caught their eyes: an old ranger's jacket, weathered and soaked, caught in the branches. Curiosity and unease battled in their minds as they approached. When they reached inside the pocket, their blood ran cold. An ID badge peeked out, belonging to Ranger Mark Lowell. The chilling detail? Ranger Lowell had been killed by lightning on Devil's Ridge over 20 years earlier, in 1952. The thought that his jacket had somehow returned, appearing in the middle of a storm exactly where the hikers had taken shelter, sent shivers down their spines. No explanation made sense. The footprints, the jacket, the lantern flicker, everything pointed to something beyond ordinary. It was as if the storm had stirred a presence from the past, leaving a warning, or perhaps just a lingering echo, for those who dared to be there. The story of Devil's Ridge didn't end with the hikers' discovery. Locals have long whispered that the ridge holds a restless presence, one that appears when the storms roll in. On nights when lightning splits the sky and rain lashes the mountains, people claim they can see a lantern swaying through the trees, moving as if guided by an unseen hand. Some say it's the spirit of Ranger Mark Lowell, still patrolling the ridge, warning travelers of danger before the thunder crashes. Others believe it's something older, a force tied to the mountain itself, using flashes of light and fleeting voices to remind humans of their fragility. Reports claim that hikers who venture too close during storms sometimes hear faint shouts, words lost in the roar of rain and thunder. It's enough to make even the most seasoned outdoorsman pause, feeling the weight of eyes watching from the dark. For anyone in the area, the legends are a constant reminder. The mountains remember, the storms have voices, and some warnings come from beyond the living. Even decades later, Devil's Ridge keeps its secrets close. The hikers return home, but the memory of that night, the footprints, the jacket, the flickering lantern never left them. Scientists and skeptics have tried to explain the events, pointing to optical illusions, weather anomalies, or overactive imaginations. Yet the locals insist otherwise. Rumors suggest that on stormy nights, the ridge still comes alive. Lanterns appear among the trees, footsteps echo through the underbrush, and a faint voice can be heard shouting warnings just before the thunder rolls. No one knows for sure if it's the spirit of Ranger Lowell, some other presence, or something entirely beyond understanding. One thing remains certain. The storms at Devil's Ridge are not just weather. They carry echoes from the past, reminders that some places are haunted, not by fear itself, but by warnings we may never fully comprehend. And for anyone who dares to venture into those mountains during a storm, you might just see the lantern for yourself. The night the storm rolled in over Dayton, Ohio, it didn't just rain, it raged. Wind howled through the trees, rattling every loose shingle on Margaret Hines' old farmhouse. Thunder cracked so loud it shook the windows in their frames, and flashes of lightning turned the sky a violent white every few seconds. Margaret sat alone by the window, watching the storm tear across the fields. At 71, she'd lived through plenty of bad weather, but this one felt different, almost angry, as if the sky itself had a grudge. The lights flickered once, then steadied, humming softly in the silence between thunderclaps. She tried to calm herself with a cup of tea, but the mug trembled in her hands each time the thunder rolled. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked louder than usual, marking the slow crawl toward midnight. The storm wasn't letting up. In fact, it seemed to be growing stronger outside. The trees bent under the wind's weight, their branches clawing at the glass like something desperate to get in. Every gust made the house groan, old wood creaking like a voice in pain. Somewhere deep inside, Margaret felt a quiet unease, the kind that whispers that something isn't quite right. Then for just a moment, between the thunder and the wind, she thought she heard something else, a sound that didn't belong to the storm at all. It wasn't thunder, it wasn't the rain, it was faint, but it was there. And soon she'd realize the storm wasn't the only thing outside her door that night. At exactly 2:45 a.m., a sharp sound cut through the roar of the storm. 3 slow knocks, steady, deliberate, and impossibly clear over the thunder. Margaret froze, the porcelain mug slipping from her hands and shattering against the floor. Her heart pounded. Maybe it was just the wind, she told herself, an old house creaking under the storm's pressure. But then it came again. 3 knocks, the same rhythm, the same weight. She turned toward the front door, her breath quick and shallow. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice trembling. No answer. Only the wind howling through the eaves and the relentless drumming of rain on the roof. Lightning flashed, bathing the room in a blinding white for a split second, and in that moment, she thought she saw a shadow on the porch. Tall, still, just beyond the glass. But when she blinked, it was gone. Her fingers hovered over the doorknob, the metal cold beneath her touch. She wanted to open it, to prove to herself it was nothing. But something deep inside told her not to. Something primal. A whisper from her instincts saying, "Don't." She stepped back, pulse racing, eyes locked on the door. Minutes passed. The storm continued its furious assault. And just as she began to think she'd imagined it, the sound returned. Softer this time, but closer. 3 knocks, only now they didn't seem to come from the door at all. They came from inside the house. The lights flickered once, twice, and then died completely. The house was swallowed by darkness, thick and absolute. For a moment, Margaret stood frozen, listening to the heavy silence that followed the last crack of thunder. Then came the rain again, pounding against the roof so violently it sounded like 1,000 fists. She fumbled for the candle she kept on the kitchen counter, her hands shaking as she struck a match. The small flame flared to life, weak but steady, casting long, trembling shadows across the walls. The flicker of light revealed just how old the house truly was. Peeling wallpaper, crooked picture frames, and the faint outline of muddy footprints on the hardwood floor. Margaret blinked, her breath hitched. The footprints led from the front door straight toward the kitchen, and then back again. Her mind raced. The door had never opened. She'd been standing right there the whole time. It was impossible. Yet the floor told a different story, one of movement, of something or someone having walked through her home while she stood frozen in fear. She crouched down, holding the candle close to the prints. They were fresh, still wet, glistening under the golden flame. The shape of a man's boot, larger than her own foot by several inches. Her throat went dry. A drop of wax fell from the candle and hissed as it hit the floor. Then, from somewhere in the house, a floorboard creaked, slow, deliberate, as if someone had just shifted their weight. Margaret's heart hammered against her chest. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The candlelight trembled as her hands began to shake harder. And that's when she realized something chilling. The footprints weren't fading. They were growing wetter, as though someone invisible was still standing right there. Margaret stumbled backward, clutching the candle so tightly the wax smeared across her palm. Her mind screamed at her to do something, anything, so she ran for the living room, where her old rotary phone sat on a side table near the window. The storm outside was deafening now, winds shrieking like voices lost in the rain. She dialed 911 with trembling fingers. Each spin of the dial felt painfully slow, every second stretching longer than the last. When the operator finally answered, Margaret's words poured out in gasps. "There's someone in my house. I heard knocking. There are footprints. Please, you have to come." The dispatcher's calm voice tried to steady her. "Stay on the line, ma'am. The officers are on their way. Lock the doors and wait somewhere safe." But before Margaret could respond, she heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. Not at the door this time. Closer, inside. Somewhere behind her, the phone slipped from her hand, swinging by its coiled cord as she turned around. The line crackled with static. Through the thunder, she swore she heard a whisper faint, almost drowned out by the storm. A man's voice, low and broken. "Help! Me!" Her breath caught in her throat. The candle flame fluttered, nearly dying. She stumbled backward, staring into the dark hallway that stretched toward the front door. The footprints were still there, but now they seemed to trail farther, leading toward the back of the house. The dispatcher's voice crackled through the receiver. "Ma'am, are you still there? Officers are en route." Margaret tried to answer, but her voice was gone. Her eyes were fixed on the shadow at the end of the hall, faint, shifting, like the outline of someone standing just beyond the edge of the candlelight. Then the line went dead. 20 long minutes crawled by before the flashing red and blue lights finally cut through the storm. The sound of tires crunching over gravel snapped Margaret out of her trance. She bolted toward the door, yanking it open just as 2 officers rushed up the porch steps, rain pelting against their uniforms. Her voice trembled as she pointed inside. "The footprints. Someone was here. I swear it." The officers exchanged uneasy glances, but followed her into the house. Their flashlights sliced through the darkness, beams bouncing off framed photos and worn wallpaper. The air inside felt thick, heavy, almost charged. Then one of them stopped. "Ma'am," he said slowly, crouching down. "You said footprints?" There they were, muddy, distinct, and still wet, leading from the door through the kitchen and back again. No other prints, no smudges, just the same solitary path, but the door itself was still locked, windows sealed, no signs of forced entry. The footprints started and ended at the same place. Right inside the door, Margaret watched as the officers searched every room. Closet doors creaked open, attic checked, basement inspected nothing. The whole house was empty, but the storm outside made it feel like something was still circling the walls, unseen. When the search was done, one officer quietly turned to her. His voice was lower now, almost hesitant. "Mrs. Hines," he said, "you live off Route 7, right? Near the old bridge?" She nodded, confused. He paused for a long moment, the beam of his flashlight trembling slightly as he continued. "2 nights ago, a man was hit by lightning just down that road. Locals say he was trying to find help, knocking on doors before the strike hit. Margaret's blood ran cold. The officer's eyes shifted to the floor, to the glistening footprints still refusing to dry. "They found him with one arm outstretched," he added quietly, as if he was still trying to knock for a moment. Neither of them spoke. The house seemed to exhale the storm, easing into a low, distant rumble, as if it, too, had heard the officer's words. Margaret's candle had burned down to a stub, its light barely holding back the shadows clinging to the corners of the room. She stared at the footprints, her voice barely a whisper. "You're saying he died right near here?" The officer nodded. "Half a mile from your driveway. Struck instantly. Locals found him the next morning, one hand out, like he'd been reaching for help that never came." His tone softened. "It's possible the rain washed some of his tracks this way. Hard to say," but Margaret wasn't listening anymore. Her gaze had drifted toward the front door. The footprints, they were fading now. Slowly, one by one, the wet outlines began to disappear, evaporating into the old wooden floor, as though they'd never been there. The younger officer swallowed hard. "Must be the heat from the candles," he muttered. But even he didn't sound convinced. Margaret's eyes filled with tears she couldn't explain. She felt something, not fear this time, but sorrow. The kind you feel when you realize a soul might have died, still begging for someone to answer. A sudden gust of wind blew through the broken seal of the window, snuffing out the last candle. The room fell into darkness once more. And in that perfect silence, just as the officers turned to leave, came one final sound, faint, hollow, and unmistakable. 3 slow knocks. The men froze. Margaret's trembling hand reached for the wall to steady herself. No one moved. The storm was gone, the night eerily calm, yet the echo of those knocks lingered, spreading through the house like a heartbeat that refused to stop. Later, when dawn finally broke, the officers found no footprints, no signs of forced entry, nothing to prove anyone had ever been there. But one thing haunted them long after that night. The front door still bore 3 small marks in the wood, exactly where someone or something had been knocking. It was a sweltering summer night in Amarillo, Texas, the kind where the air sticks to your skin and the sky feels heavy with heat. A group of teenagers had parked their cars at the edge of an empty field, cameras and phones ready, trying to capture lightning for a school project. The clouds above were thick and dark, rolling in like a silent army ready to strike. Thunder rumbled in the distance, low and threatening, shaking the ground beneath their feet. Each flash of lightning split the sky in jagged white streaks, illuminating the barren field in brief, ghostly bursts. The wind picked up, rustling the tall grass and sending a chill down their spines. Even in the summer heat, they joked and laughed, trying to mask the growing tension. But every crack of thunder and flicker of lightning made their hearts race faster. There was something in the storm that didn't feel natural, almost alive. Watching, waiting. None of them realized how close they were to witnessing something that would haunt them for years. Something that no one would fully explain. At exactly 10:17 p.m., a lightning bolt tore through the sky, striking less than 20 feet from where the teens were standing. The crack was deafening, a blinding flash that made their cameras momentarily useless. For a heartbeat, the world was nothing but white light and ringing ears. They stumbled backward, shielding their eyes, hearts hammering in unison. The air smelled of ozone, sharp and electric, and the ground vibrated under their feet. Every instinct screamed danger, yet curiosity kept them rooted, phones still recording. Then came the first hint that this wasn't just any storm. When they played back the footage, something impossible appeared. In the flickering flash of lightning, a faint shape resembled a human face. Mouth wide open, eyes hollow, frozen in a scream that seemed to echo far beyond the field. Logan, one of the teens, stumbled and collapsed as the playback sound filled the car. His ears rang violently, and he claimed he could still hear the scream long after the storm had passed. Panic set in. The footage had captured something no one could explain, something alive within the lightning itself. The storm had done more than strike the ground. It had left behind a terrifying, lingering echo. As they replayed the footage, the terror became undeniable. The lightning didn't just strike, it screamed. On the screen, the bolt's jagged lines seemed to twist unnaturally, forming the faint outline of a human face. The mouth was open in a silent scream. Yet when the video's audio played, a shrill, distorted wail tore through the speakers. Logan clutched his ear, staggering backward. I can still hear it, he gasped, voice shaking. His friends could see the panic in his eyes. Something about that scream wasn't just loud. It was wrong. Too sharp, too high, too human to be natural. The rest of the group huddled together, staring at the footage over and over. Every time the bolt flashed, that twisted face reappeared, and the scream replayed itself, cutting through the night like a living thing. Even though the storm had passed, the sound lingered in their minds, echoing far beyond the field where it began. Some of the teens tried to rationalize it: audio distortion, overlapping thunder, camera glitch. But deep down, they knew it was something else, something impossible. Something that no explanation could fully cover. The summer night had started as a harmless project, but now it had captured something that defied reason, a scream etched into lightning itself. After the initial shock, the group knew they couldn't ignore what they had captured. One of the teens reached out to an audio engineer, hoping for a rational explanation. What came back was far from comforting. The engineer confirmed what they had feared. "This isn't thunder," he said. "It's a human voice, but pitched at an impossible frequency." Every word was calm, clinical, yet the implications sent chills down their spines. The sound on the recording wasn't natural. It wasn't accidental. It was deliberate, and it was screaming. Reports claim that the engineer replayed the clip dozens of times, trying to isolate any normal pattern. None appeared. The scream didn't match any known phenomenon. No storm, no animal, no mechanical noise. It existed only in that moment. Frozen in the lightning's flash, the teens sat in stunned silence, realizing the storm had captured something that should not exist. What was a school project had transformed into a chilling encounter with the inexplicable. And though the analysis provided facts, it raised far more questions than answers. The footage, the scream, the twisted face, and the lightning, it all lingered like a puzzle with pieces that refused to fit together. Fear quickly took hold. The teens, shaken and unsettled, deleted the original video from their phones. They couldn't bear to watch it again, couldn't face the idea that what they had captured might be more than a trick of light and sound. Yet despite their attempts to erase it, a few copies survived. Small, grainy versions circulated online under the name "The Lightning That Screamed." People who saw it described an eerie feeling that lingered long after the video ended. A sound that seemed to crawl under your skin, like the storm itself had found a voice. Logan recovered physically after 3 days in the hospital. But he never fully shook the memory. He claimed he could still hear the scream in quiet moments, the unnatural pitch echoing through his mind. Others in the group reported nightmares, flashes of lightning forming faces in the corner of their vision. Rumors began to spread. Some said the storm had opened a doorway to something beyond understanding. Others claimed it was a warning, a glimpse of nature's fury-given voice. No one could agree, but everyone who saw the footage felt the same thing. This wasn't just thunder. Something else had screamed, and no one would ever be able to explain why. Even now, years later, the footage continues to haunt those who've seen it. The scream, captured in lightning and frozen forever on video, refuses to fade from memory. Scientists, skeptics, and storm chasers have all debated its origin, but no one has been able to explain it. Some say it was a strange atmospheric anomaly, a fluke of sound and light. Others whisper that it was something far more unsettling, a voice trapped in the storm, screaming for reasons no human could understand. Rumors suggest that anyone who watches the video alone at night hears it differently, as if it reaches straight into your ears and lingers in your mind. The storm has long passed over Amarillo, but the scream remains, etched into pixels and memory. It's a reminder that even in the brightest flash of lightning, there can be something hidden, watching, screaming, and impossible to ignore. And for anyone daring enough to seek it out online, you might just hear it yourself.